Perceptions. Welcome back to Call the Harline Hotline. I'm your host, Harleen Bagger, and today's topic is perception. So, today I've decided to split it up into three categories. So, we'll talk about first impressions, we'll talk about can perceptions be changed, and then lastly, we'll give a big conclusion and overview of my take on it. So, a quick summary of it and what I took away from it. So, before I decided to do this topic, I really got inspired from one of my friends, and she was really struggling about her perception she gives off to other people. And I realized that I'm quite similar and I do the same. Like, I struggle with it quite a bit. Like, I've always been a bit of a people pleaser, and perception plays a really big role in that. Because if you really think about it, everyone has a different perception of you based on what they know of you, and that can change from first impressions, or some people may argue it may not change, but there's first impressions. There's loads of factors that really play into perception that people don't consider or really deep that much. So we'll slide into the first category, which is first impressions. So a lot of the time, a perception of a person, so like an ideology of how a person is and their characteristics, are formed from first impressions. Now, first impressions can either be good or bad, or they can have no meaning at all. Perceptions are often based off how your character is presented through that day, and each person may perceive you differently. So perceptions are based on how a person perceives you, and it's subjective. That's something that a lot of people don't consider, that perceptions are really, really subjective. So I might find a person really, really lovely and nice, but you may not find them lovely and nice, and it could be due to the factor that that person has treated you differently. So person A has treated me differently compared to you, and therefore you have a different perception of them. Or it just could be how we take what we take from that person, and that is not your fault. So I struggled up quite a bit because I was really concerned about how people perceived me, and that does really, really affect you. But let's talk about first impressions. Do you guys think people's impression of you can change? Because a lot of the time, people are so focused on first impressions and they believe that I can make or break it. But I don't know if I believe if that's true. There's been times where I've given off a wrong first impression, regardless of the circumstances or the situation, and I've managed to change that perception as well. So it links to the two topics, the two subcategories that I really wanted to talk about. But first impressions can be groundbreaking in the fact that they can make or break like what a person thinks of you, but I do think that it can change, which is a good thing, because people that are worried about how they give off in the first impression shouldn't be, because I could think a person's really, really nice, really, really good during our first impression, but as time goes on, it changes. Now, that also leads me on to the fact that everyone has a different perception of you, and that perception is, like I said before, it is subjective, but you shouldn't let that get to you, because you know who you are. So don't let anyone else's words or thoughts and what they think about you let it get to you, because I've been there, done that. I do believe first impressions are not that important as much as everyone gives importance of. They do help determine how a person perceives you, but if you really work hard enough, or like if you really let the time pass, with time, those first impressions can be manipulated and they can be changed, which swiftly leads on to the next point that I wanted to talk about, is can perceptions change? So you've already really heard strongly about my viewpoint when I talked about first impressions, but I do feel like perceptions can be changed. Your viewpoint on a person and how you perceive someone, like I keep repeating again and again, it is subjective and it's based on different factors. So, how a person perceives themselves and portrays themselves is how you will perceive them. On one day, a person may perceive themselves to be like the loveliest person, but as you go on, like there's like this phrase that their true colors will start showing. So, you do tend to learn more about a person as the time goes on, and I feel like the longer the time goes on, the perception gets changed. That doesn't mean that those really, really key moments of those perceptions won't stay the same, because they will. If you've made a really big mark, that perception of you will change. So, but I do think that with each character. So every person that you meet, you're a different character. You will never be the same person to everyone. So like for example, in your family you're perceived as something else, and with your friends you're perceived as something else. And that's because of how you portray yourself, and you don't really realize it, but every single time you are with a different person, you end up portraying yourself a little bit differently, or it could be due to what's happened during the day. So, for example, to work is not a really great time to meet me because I portray myself as a very like I'm tired, I'm not in the best of moods. So if a person is constantly meeting me after work and catching me at that time, I'm obviously going to be perceived as someone who's really like angry, moody, etc. Because I know everyone has different perceptions based on the timing as well. So um I feel like if you catch someone at the wrong timing in their life, they can be portrayed as someone that they're not. And I do feel like a lot of people are very like once they've made up a perception of you, they're very rigid in it as well. So as I was saying, I do feel like it can be changed, but that you do meet those stubborn people that just refuse to change their perception in you, and they won't listen to anyone else, and they will make sure that everyone else around them has that same perception of you. And with those people, if you can't change it, you can't change it. End of. Like, just don't care about them, which like sort of leads to my summary, my own conclusion, and like what my viewpoint is. If you can't change someone's perception of you, why should you care so much? Like I say, like give it one go, give it two goes. And I'm a people pleaser, so probably not the best person to take advice from. But if you can't change their perception, then let it be. Keep that, let them have that perception of you. And first impressions are not everything. So if you've had one first bad experience in first impression, it's not make or break, unless it's like those really like really important stuff like an interview or something where you need to make sure you have a great first impression. But if it's with other people, with your peers or making new friends, they're not everything. And if that person won't give you the chance after that first impression, then they're not the one for you. So one of my really close friends, the first impression and how she perceived me the first time was very negative. She just thought I was just rude, and it was my fault because I had left her. I didn't respond to her, and when she was making an inquiry, but it just, in my point of view, I had a different perception of her too. But afterwards, when we started actually speaking and communicating, we realized we actually get along really well, and it blossomed into a really cute and a really good friendship. And that again goes back to the communication, how I say communication is always key. So we just communicated through that, and our perception of each other has changed, and we realized we're actually very similar people, we get along, and we've got a great friendship. So if the person really truly wants to make an effort with you and they see potential in you, their perception of you may change. First impressions aren't everything, and just let your personality shine. Don't change your personality just because you want someone else's perception of you to change. So some people will be like, "Oh yeah, she's so annoying, blah blah blah, whatever." But I've just let that be because it's just like it's who I am. I'm a loud character. I like talking. I like yapping. It's just sort of the things that make me. So I'm not gonna change that. But if there are times that I've just been rude and stuff, I do go back and be like, "Listen, I'm sorry about that," and try and fix that the way they perceived me. But I don't think you should change who you are just because a person perceives you a specific way. And if they're not willing to change that perception of you, even though you've tried to apologize and like you've tried not even apologize for being who you are, but like try to apologize if there's been like a mishap, and they still don't want to change that perception of you, then just leave it. They're not worth it. Those people aren't meant to be for you. Don't stress too much about how you portray yourself in first impressions because everyone has a different perception of you. The way you act, you may act the same, but for three other people, they will perceive you differently, and that's what they take away from you and what they have learned at home or like their personalities. And therefore like personality is such a big topic, and that's something that we'll discuss further in another episode. But I do hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on Call the Harleen Hotline. Mwah.